everyone. Suprabhat. Suprabhat. Aap kaise ho? Okay, let's get started. How are you? Any hangover? Don't think so. There was no alcohol yesterday. Okay, let's get started. Today we'll talk about Laravel, PHP, and Docker. Level up your development workflow, developer workflow. So who am I? I'm Francesco. I like making videos. I'm a bit too active on Twitter. Sorry, now it's called X. Very active on YouTube. And many people asked me, Francesco, have you ever coded in PHP and Laravel? And I get offended because I made a video. Okay, it was some time ago, but I made a video on how to create some PHP CRUD REST API using Laravel, Composer, Postgres, and Docker. So that's the proof that I code sometimes in PHP, sometimes. Someone asked me, Francesco, is it your first time in India? No, this is my fourth time in India. First time in Ahmedabad, fourth time in India. Every year I was doing a 30 days visa, and then I was coming to India. Then 30 days visa, and then I was coming to India. This year I made a 5 years visa, so I can come until 2030. Applause. Amazing. So let's have this conversation. I would like to have some questions at the end. And this talk is not about hype. It's not about doing complex things. It's about this. This talk is about us. This talk is about developers. And also about sleeping. Did you sleep well? This course is, sorry, I do too many videos. This talk is about sleeping at night, knowing that localhost is the same as production. Because the reality is that when you have your laptop, your PC, whatever, that's different from the server, right? Why? Because there is a mismatch, first of all, in terms of operating system. For example, Mac OS and on Windows, you can have things with its case insensitive, and on Linux is sensitive. But it's not just that. There are many, many differences. Also, there is what is called version hell, or different versions. Maybe you are running your a later version of PHP on your laptop, but then in production on the server there is a different version. Or even worse, maybe you are working for 2 or 3 different clients, and they need different versions of PHP. And it's hard to switch among them. Another one is all the hidden dependencies. And I think in the PHP world there are many. For example, you need to install Node.js to have some dependencies, but you don't really need Node.js, right? Or maybe you need to install Redis or something else. And this might pollute your system. And again, it's not the same as the server. Now, what is this? Before 1960, if you want to ship something, on a real boat, it was a mess. Everybody was throwing like sacks or barrels. There was not a real standard, okay? And after in 1960, they invented something like this, the real containers. So basically you have these boxes that you can put on a boat, and everything goes inside that box. So this is a real world analogy to understand what's coming next. So the concept is that we would like to ship our code, our application, which is not just code, and bundle everything. So operating system, the version, extensions, the configuration, which for example is very important if you have a production environment or a development environment, right? An internet should not have the password of the production DB, right? Right? Right, okay. And the guarantee is that if the container starts on your laptop, then it's guaranteed to start on the server. And this is all the concept of containerization. How many people are familiar with the idea of containerization and Docker? Oh, okay, amazing. Okay, love that. Okay, so I want to talk about a concept that I really like, which is the idea of Laravel sale. I think that actually is the version on version 12. And I know that Docker can be intimidating. This is what they told me, but is it true? No? Yes? Do you like Docker or not? Raise your hand if you like Docker. Okay, amazing, they lied to me. Perfect. Because Sail is a lightweight CLI wrapper. It helps, how many people actually use it? Some people, okay, nice, perfect, love it. And you can run it just using this command, vendor bin sail up, and you can install it with this curl command, okay? And it gives you all the configuration that you need, especially in the local development environment. So you have this script, you have this configuration that relies on a standard, it's basically a compose file under the hood, but I really love what the Laravel community did with Docker, because they make it easy for people who are not familiar with Docker. And I think this is kind of unique compared to other technologies that say, okay, if you want to learn Docker, otherwise we don't care. Laravel community really cared about, say, okay, maybe Docker is a bit too much to understand, but you can use something that will help you in the development environment. I really appreciate that. I really like it. And so you have this command, sail up, which is basically an alias for compose up. So once you get familiar with Docker, it will be easy. But I'm not here just to talk about Laravel sail, but maybe we can go even beyond. And how can Docker actually help us in our process, in our development process? So sail is optimized for convenience, to make things easy, but of course, all the production requires the optimization and performances that we need when we actually have an application up and running on a real server. And the reasons are that sail has everything embedded, so Node.js, Xdebug. Instead, when we are in production, we don't need, for example, Node anymore. Also, in terms of security, sail, as usually happens also when we do things in our development environment, it runs as root. On production, we should not run things as root, right? Well, okay, perfect. And also maybe we want a smaller image to have of course, faster deployment. We will go back to this because many people asked me about how we can have a smaller image. So one idea is to be, instead of using the XAMPP, I don't know if it's pronounced, but I say XAMPP, I think it's correct, instead we can use Laravel sail because it gives us all these things. So it avoids all the global mess if you need to update things, and these things happens on a daily basis or a weekly basis, I would say. So, and the good thing is that every project has its own private box. So now that we want, now that we have AI and we want to create many, many projects, this might be very useful. Again, to solve the problem of versions with Docker is amazing because you can switch among versions without even installing them. And maybe we want to avoid hours or many times installing extensions, uninstalling extensions, and so on. So it's very easy to use. And also, when we are in our development environment, I think a good practice is to don't clutter all your root directory, but having, I think this is of course for things a bit advanced. So once we are getting into the production grade applications, we should move the configurations, for example, Nginx, MySQL, into a dedicated Docker folder. As you see here, for example, we might have one configuration for a production environment. Think about like, here we might have the password for the production DB. Of course, this usually maybe doesn't go on a public repository, of course. And this might be the one for the development. And we can use, again, specific compose file. Compose is basically to define all the services of our applications, because usually an application is not just a single file or a single thing, but it has some other services. Okay, many people raise their hand, so I'll go fast here. The Docker file is amazing because it's basically a text file that can help us to create what is basically an image of our application. Do you know that you don't really need a Docker file that you can even create a Docker image just by command line. And this is great because you can have a Docker file which is basically a list of commands to create this image based on stack. Usually, one line in a Docker file is one layer on a Docker image. Images are like pancakes. It's like a stack of layers. And someone asked me about how we can make images small. Much depends on this one. So if you ever use Docker for any of your applications, the first thing you should go is here, because depending on what you use here, this will affect the size of your final image. There is something called like Alpine. Usually they make lightweight versions of operating system, like Debian versions, or even the PHP one. If you want, maybe you are familiar with this command. If you use Linux, this is to update all the packages. You can have this keyword like called run. You can run multiple things. This can also be useful, for example, if you want to run a script, for example, a PHP script. Another command is the workdir that creates a folder and steps into it when we run this command, because maybe we don't want our application to be at the root level of our file system. To optimize our builds, one interesting concept is the concept of multi-stage builds. How many people are familiar with this concept of multi-stage builds? Less people than Docker. Okay, so it makes sense. So usually we have this problem that when we want to build an image, we have all these dependencies, like Node.js to install maybe something, Tailwind and something like that. On the production server, we don't want it. So how can we do this? How can we solve this problem? This is a quick example. We have basically, this is called multi-stage builds for a reason. These are different stages like this. This is the first one. We can call it like the builder, to basically, for example, to install the NPM dependencies. But you see, then on the second one, this one, you see this command, copy is basically to copy files or folders inside the file system of the Docker image. We can just pick the final result of this npm run build. So doing it in this way, the final image, the final application will be lightweight. And of course, the clear advantage is that we can run this on all the servers, all the machines that have Docker installed. Another important concept is the Docker Compose. So the Docker file is more like to build this image, these files. Docker Compose is a sort of orchestrator, is to orchestrate multiple services. We can have, for example, we have here an example where, for example, we have Laravel, we have a MySQL database. I think Docker works great, for example, for databases. And all these services, they communicate on networks. I'm not going into the details, but they communicate on a specific and isolated network. Otherwise, we'll have the same issue or having these all on our machine. Another problem that usually we have, or maybe you heard, maybe it's a myth, that Docker is slow because I have to rebuild every time I see the changes. This is false, because we can use something, a concept called bind mount, to create a sort of portal. So when your code changes, for example, in your IDE, the container reflects this instantly. So check it out, the bind mount, if you want to use Docker in your development environment, but you don't want to build an image every single time. Other important things, I talked about the internal networking of Docker containers. One classic example is that when we start creating these containers, containers communicate each other mostly by name, by container name. So the container name will be very important. Usually, the containers, they find each other by name and not by IP, because otherwise we might have some problems if we run this on the same machine. So remember this, especially if you are switching or if you want to try Docker in your development environment. Okay, and now there is this concept of having a sidecar. Okay, so PHP and Laravel can be our motorbike, and Docker can be the sidecar. Because Docker can be used not just for our application itself. Maybe we are just using our application and say, okay, I don't care about Docker. I just want to do the things the way I know. And I understand this, we can still be friends, but I want to tell you that we can also use Docker just for tooling. Maybe in your application you want to use Redis. Redis is basically for caching. Maybe we want to test some emails. How many people have ever worked with emails in their applications? Okay, so, and how many people have ever sent an email by mistake to in the production environment? Raise your hand. Okay. Even people who didn't use this. Okay. Okay. And so this might be, for example, a solution. We'll show this soon. And also there is something called mail search to have a full text search. For example, this mail pit can really be useful, and it can run inside a Docker container, so in an isolated environment. So if we send an email by mistake, this will run inside this Docker container. Basically, we are recreating a production environment, but it's safe and will not, of course, lose our job because we are sending this. I think this happened with Uber. Can't remember, some time ago. Some company, they sent an email to like, 1 million people. I can't remember now, but probably they were not using this. Another one which might be interesting is to use a simulation of an S3 storage, always running in a container. I think it's called Minio. So it's an S3 compatible server. And you see, these are just examples, of course, but you can also look for yours. So you have your application, and then when you want to interface with a different tool, instead of installing things, or even worse, trying them in production, we try them in a containerized environment. Another one that I mentioned is this instance search. So basically, we can have this full text search, again, using this container in the development environment. And all these services can be added into a Docker Compose. We'll see this soon. And this is not related just to, you don't have to Dockerize your application if you want to use these tools, again. So if you don't need to run some installations and something like that, you can have something like that. So you have a Docker Compose, you have a set of services, and for example, you can use this just for Mailpit, Mail Search, Minio, whatever you want. And then you can do the commands, and then you have this set of tools on the side. I think this is really amazing. Now, some new updates about Docker that maybe you have not heard about. One of them is Docker Scout. Basically, I think these updates are amazing for now in this AI era, because maybe we do things so fast, but we can scout our container and our application before they go in production. Okay, and this is and if it finds some hole, some CVEs, I think there are like one almost every day nowadays in our environment, especially in the React and JavaScript side. Another concept is Docker hardened images. This I think is quite new. I think it's been released 1 month ago. So, and the good news is that Docker made them free for everyone. So amazing. Well done, Docker. So we have this environment when all these images they are working in an environment which is just been tested by Docker itself. So basically it comes free of charge for us, so you can check this out, this new feature. I think also PHP Laravel has their own version, so be sure to use this, especially in a production environment. So the mission is complete. Now we have in this workflow, I hope we leveled up, or at least I mentioned something that might be useful for your development experience. We really care about the developer experience, especially in this phase. And I think that both Laravel and Docker, they share something unique. They give you freedom to do whatever you want. I like it, for example, I really love the concept of Laravel that lets you deploy things in the way you want. Yes, you can use Laravel Cloud if you want, but it lets you deploy Laravel in the way you want. And it's a very similar concept of what Docker does. Docker lets you use it or not, and you will decide if you want to use it or not. Okay? Don't have the clicker constancy no more. So finally, we can say there is no more it works on my machine. I'm sure you have seen some of memes about this. So, shukriya, or I will say habar, right? Thank you so much. Okay, this part was easy. Now I'm scared because Okay, that was the easy part.
What is ciao? What is grazia? What is belle?
Grazie.
What is grazias?
Grazie.
How you say? Grazia?
Grazie.
Am I pronouncing correct? Grazia.
Yes.
Perfect. Come this way.
Take
Come on
care.
the right side.
Yeah.
So first of all, tell me how was your experience last night? You're like just dancing.
My experience, I was in the video
Yeah.
with the drone. I didn't like something like
this.
that.
Perfect.
So, yes,
So I have a question answers for you. We'll start with that,
Yes.
and then we'll do it. Things run time.
Let's do it.
So can I see it on screen? Oh, before that, what is it? I have to share. It is fill in the blank.
Okay.
So it's an underline. There is a statement, and you have to finish it up. All right.
Sure.
So I start with first
Can I
question.
say more than one word?
Yeah, you can say one word, but
Okay,
it has to
because
be like a short statement,
I can
not
keep-
like a thought. That's why it is fill in the blank. First one. Laravel plus Docker in one sentence is
It's the freedom to do whatever you want.
perfect. Second, most slow apps are actually slow because of
Developers that don't understand things.
great. Third, if Docker could speak one bad habit in developers, would it complain most about is
Docker could speak one
thing.
bad
If Docker
habit.
could, yeah, sorry,
Developers
speak
would
one bad habit.
complain about most is I think like sticking always on the same way, like never change.
Okay. वांधो नहीं. 4. The best feeling as an engineer is
When they see the test that pass, all green.
5th, containers should be treated more like underscore than like.
Boxes then like I don't know something complicated that is complicating our life.
6th, you once coached volleyball before becoming a developer. That coach mindset still show you in your tech work
As a discipline and also in the idea of always keep improving, always keep training. You are never done. You will keep learning even when you're 50, even when you're 60, because this is what will make you a better version of yourself.
Okay, good. 7th, if you could pick one tech superpower, it would be
Understanding what the AI does for me.
nice. 8th, one thing no one would know about you from your YouTube videos is
No one
the
would know.
secret side of you, which is not there on the camera.
That I like cooking and I like gardening.
Ah, nice. 9th, your favorite non-tech hobby that helps you recharge is
Working out, exercising.
nice. That was easy. Like
Yeah.
you build good muscles. And the last question, number 10, you definitely didn't see it coming when underscore happened at Laracon India.
The after party.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
All right. Thank you, Francesco.
Yes.
Thank you for being great speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we take a selfie?
Yep.
I want to take the best selfie of my life because this is a big stage. So let's take it.
Yep.
Are
Let's
we
do it
ready?
together.
Oh,
It's a video.
let's do it. No, because so I can take a frame.
Oh, grazie bene,
Grazie.
Prago, ciao.
Thank you.
Miss
Thank you.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you.